At 12:30 a.m. on Sunday, August 4th, 2024, the quiet atmosphere of the Slateworth area in Manchester's Castlefield residential district was suddenly shattered by piercing screams echoing through the night. Residents nearby were startled awake, then horrified to discover a man and woman collapsed on the grass along the canal, their clothes soaked in blood. Within seconds of the initial shock, a flurry of emergency calls flooded in, carrying the desperate hope that there was still time to save 2 lives hanging in the balance. Less than a few minutes later, Greater Manchester Police's Rapid Response Unit raced to the scene. Medical personnel rushed in while calling for clear passage. Before them lay a man barely clinging to life, with deep wounds in his abdomen still bleeding profusely, and beside him a young woman with bloodied legs, her face covered in a strange liquid substance, eyes wild with pain and terror. Both victims received immediate first aid before being rushed to the hospital through the dark night, leaving behind the flashing red and blue lights and the crime scene for investigators. Under the flickering blue and red lights from police cars reflecting off the Castlefield Canal waters, investigators quietly spread out to observe and quickly formed initial assessments. The scene was a secluded grassy area by the canal, about 65 feet from the WAP pub, which had closed early. At first glance, it seemed like an ideal location for a quick mugging. However, all the evidence told a different story. There were no signs of prolonged struggle, nor were any belongings missing. The female victim's purse and wallet were intact, virtually ruling out the possibility of an ordinary robbery. Instead, scattered details at the scene suggested a more sinister scenario. The man's wallet lay scattered near a park bench with identification still inside. A cell phone had been thrown onto the grass several feet from the victim's position. On the damp, cold grass, investigators discovered relatively fresh footprint impressions leading toward the path along the canal bank. Everything revealed the image of a bold, daring perpetrator who suddenly struck with a small but sharp weapon. Most notably, strange, bright-colored liquid stains were splattered across the victims' faces and clothing. The forensic team immediately collected every trace of evidence to bring back to the laboratory for analysis. A witness living nearby reported that immediately after the screams rang out, he glimpsed a dark figure darting into a dark alley before vanishing, all happening so quickly he couldn't make out the face. This brief account was enough to convince investigators that this wasn't an impulsive act, but a planned ambush. The perpetrator had likely been lying in wait in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike before quickly retreating, taking advantage of the dim pre-dawn hours to conceal their tracks. Immediately, law enforcement cordoned off the entire waterfront area, setting up barrier tape along a section of the canal side road to protect the crime scene in preparation for a thorough and comprehensive examination. By morning of the same day, under pressure from the media and panic in the community, the detective inspector in charge of the case appeared to reassure the press that police were urgently collecting evidence and pursuing the perpetrator. He revealed that the investigation team had obtained some security camera footage along with initial witness statements, while appealing for anyone with relevant information to come forward to help solve this horrific case. Initially, identifying the 2 victims proved difficult. The man had fallen into a deep coma from severe blood loss, while the young woman was trapped in panic, her mental state so disturbed she could barely speak, only managing broken sobs and fragmented words in Vietnamese. A medical worker later recalled that between her gasping breaths, the girl repeatedly said something that sounded like, "Viet, Viet." But in that chaotic moment, no one understood the meaning. People simply thought she might be trying to speak her native language to the doctor, or in her dazed state was vaguely calling out to her homeland. At the hospital, to find leads, police immediately inventoried the victim's belongings. In the man's wallet, they discovered a UK driver's license bearing the name of a person of Vietnamese origin. Let's call him T. Records quickly showed he resided in Manchester, worked as an IT engineer, and importantly, had a family with 3 young children. This detail surprised investigators. Why would a single father, bearing responsibility for 3 young children, be present at a secret late-night rendezvous like this? Meanwhile, from the blood-stained handbag of the female victim, Investigators discovered personal items along with a round-trip London-Manchester train ticket dated August 3, 2024. The name printed on the ticket matched a Vietnamese citizen ID card, revealing the woman's identity as A, 25 years old. From preliminary information, they learned she came from a well-off family and had been given the opportunity to study graduate school in London. Friends described A as a friendly, outgoing girl who liked making friends and regularly participated in Vietnamese student community activities in the UK. Following this lead, Manchester police immediately coordinated with London forces to verify A's residence. They quickly located a small apartment in the Cridland area of South London, where she regularly stayed. The detail about the journey from London opened up an inter-county investigation connecting two cities in this mysterious case. By the afternoon of August 4th, when A had passed her panic state and gradually regained consciousness, a special investigating officer was sent directly to the Manchester hospital to record her preliminary statement. Though still very weak with a broken voice through tears, A struggled to recount what had happened. She said she had left London for Manchester to meet a male friend she had recently met, to walk around and chat during the day. When evening fell and the two were strolling along the quiet Castlefield waterfront, suddenly a figure in black clothing wearing a mask emerged from the shadows. In a terrifying moment lasting only seconds, he sprayed some kind of liquid directly at her, causing her eyes to burn and blur, and immediately afterward she only had time to see her companion collapse after a fatal stab wound. A screamed in terror, but before she could react, the cold blade had already pierced through her thigh, the sharp pain causing her to crumple onto the grass. Everything happened too quickly. The dark figure immediately fled, leaving her in panic and pooling blood. "Here," A's voice choked up, her shoulders trembling with unbearable fear. When the investigator gently asked if she could think of anyone with motive to harm her, A squeezed her eyes shut, broke into sobs, then uttered a name: Viet Tran. That sound was like a second knife cutting through the silent air of the hospital room. The investigators immediately froze, because now they understood that the word Viet the girl had been frantically repeating during her initial panic was actually referring to this name. Immediately, police conducted a database search and discovered the name Viet Tran matched a report the female victim had filed with London police at the end of July 2024. At that time, A had reported being harassed and suspiciously stalked. She suspected Viet had secretly infiltrated her phone to read stolen messages and learn her private schedule, but due to lack of concrete evidence, the matter only resulted in a warning. Now, linking the victim's statement with archived data, the full picture gradually became clear. The seemingly scattered pieces now fit together, revealing a direct connection between the perpetrator and victim. The biggest knot in the case, the question of who was behind the brutal attack, had almost been untied. And from a vague name only mentioned in panic, Viet Tran had officially become suspect number 1 in this case. Once Viet Tran was identified as the primary suspect, Manchester police immediately coordinated with London forces to launch an urgent manhunt. Records showed Viet Tran, Vietnamese nationality, born January 2003, had come to the UK to study information technology at a London college. From the few relationships he had left behind, police quickly grasped a picture of a person who lived in isolation, with few friends, partly due to language barriers, partly due to his naturally withdrawn, unsocial personality. Notably, Viet had previously resided in the Croydon area of South London, but at this time was not present at his fixed address. His unusual disappearance further raised suspicions that he was in hiding or constantly changing locations to avoid pursuit. An urgent arrest warrant was issued immediately that night. London police units were mobilized to stand by at familiar locations once associated with the suspect, from former workplaces and close friends' homes to university dormitories. Simultaneously, all transportation hubs from Manchester to London were placed on high alert to block any possibility of his movement. While the net gradually tightened, the investigation team also raced against time. They understood clearly that if they couldn't gather additional evidence and build a solid case file, the suspect could completely deny the charges, even flee far away. From A's statement, police quickly determined this wasn't a random mugging, but was directly motivated by emotional conflict, specifically the blind, jealous rage of an ex-boyfriend. Therefore, instead of targeting property, the perpetrator focused all their cruelty on inflicting harm on the couple. At the crime scene, though the perpetrator had deliberately tried to erase all traces, the forensic technical team persistently examined every small detail. Under UV light, splotches of liquid substance appeared clearly on the grass. Following these traces, they found a dense bush near the waterfront. Quick on-site analysis confirmed this was glow-in-the-dark paint, which the perpetrator had used to blind the victims at the moment of attack. Even more surprising, when investigators carefully searched through the layer of dry leaves in the bush, they discovered a black fabric bag hidden carefully inside. Within it, a scene that made the entire team fall silent. A set of clothes stained with blood, a hood, and a medium-sized folding knife, all wrapped neatly in multiple layers of plastic bags, showing the meticulous preparation and calculation of the perpetrator. Clearly, after committing the crime, the perpetrator had quickly changed clothes and hidden all evidence in the bush to avoid detection when leaving the scene. However, this seemingly careful calculation became a crucial turning point in solving the case. Recovering the weapon along with the disguise was like finding the key to unlock the entire door of truth. Forensic analysis was immediately conducted with clear results. Bloodstains on the clothing and folding knife completely matched the blood types of the two victims. Additionally, several blurred fingerprints appeared on the knife handle. Though not clear enough for immediate comparison, combined with A's statement, this physical evidence further strengthened suspicion that Viet Tran was the perpetrator. The investigation didn't stop there. Investigators continued deploying a series of meticulous interviews with residents and bar staff around the Castlefield area to seek additional witnesses. A young couple confirmed that around midnight, they had seen a young Asian man in black clothes lingering near Sibo restaurant, exactly when A&T had just left this establishment. Meanwhile, security staff at Rosie's ballroom also clearly remembered a young man acting suspiciously, standing hesitantly across the street, his eyes following when A&T departed. Most significantly, was evidence voluntarily submitted to police by the owner of a boat moored on the canal. A video clip from a security doorbell, recorded around 12:32 a.m. on August 4th. In that dim frame, the silhouette of a masked man suddenly darted past the waterfront. When approaching the boat, he paused momentarily, then hastily ripped off the hood mask and threw it straight into the dark water, exposing his young face before quickly disappearing from the camera's view. Though the nighttime footage lacked brightness and wasn't truly sharp, the basic facial features and build all matched the identification of suspect Viet Tran. The witness also firmly stated that he ran at extremely high speed, but showed no signs of panic. On the contrary, every gesture was calm and cold, as if every step had been calculated in advance. This detail further confirmed this wasn't an impulsive act, but a plan prepared with chilling psychological calculation. Parallel to examining the crime scene, the investigation team also focused on a crucial angle: digital evidence. Based on information London police provided about A's previous suspicions that her phone had been infiltrated, digital specialists were immediately mobilized to analyze the device. The results left the entire investigation room silent. A's phone had been installed with sophisticated spyware, allowing others to remotely access all messages, call history, and even track GPS location in real time. This discovery perfectly explained why the attacker could know every detail of the date schedule, from departure time, destination, to the restaurant she and her companion chose. When expanding the investigation, police also found transaction traces on the dark web. Viet Tran was the one who had hired hackers to infiltrate A's phone, at considerable cost. Through this, he gathered all messages, train ticket information, as well as restaurant reservation details, crucial pieces to construct his obsessive attack plan. Indeed, the access history on the device revealed another horrifying truth. Just days before the incident, A's account had been illegally accessed from a strange IP address in London. Not stopping at crime scene evidence, police continued expanding checks on station data and public transportation camera systems. CCTV footage from London Euston Station captured the moment on the morning of August 3rd. Viet Tran appeared alone, backpack on his shoulder, quietly purchasing a train ticket to Manchester. Later, on the cross-city train, corridor car cameras also caught his face, eyes staring straight ahead, cold and tense. When the train stopped at Manchester Piccadilly Station that afternoon, once again that face appeared clearly before surveillance camera lenses, undeniable. From the station, he began secretly tailing A and T, always maintaining sufficient distance to avoid drawing attention. However, a series of public transportation cameras had unknowingly become silent witnesses, recording this entire chilling stalking journey. In the footage, about 300 feet from the couple, the silhouette of a young man wearing a mask and baseball cap appeared clearly. Though he tried to maintain distance, his eyes never left them for even a second, like a patient predator waiting for opportunity. By connecting dozens of video segments from Sibo Restaurant, Rosie's Bar to the small streets on their route, police constructed a detailed map of the suspect's movements. At the same time, they urgently requested court orders to trace Viet's phone location history. The returned results were truly shocking. All his phone tower connections matched A's itinerary perfectly, from 6 p.m. on August 3rd until after midnight on August 4th. The persistent, cold stalking journey of the perpetrator had been completely exposed through digital data. With all evidence tightly linked, law enforcement decided to act. At dawn on August 5th, 2024, less than 24 hours after the incident, an urgent arrest operation was deployed. Metropolitan Police coordinated with Manchester colleagues to suddenly raid a shabby boarding room in Croydon, London, where reports indicated Viet Tran was hiding. The door burst open under flickering flashlight beams, and exactly as predicted, inside was a young man whose appearance completely matched the suspect's description. At the moment of restraint, Viet Tran offered no resistance. Instead, he sat quietly, his face showing an eerily calm composure, even with a hint of relief as if knowing the escape had reached its end. Along with the arrest, police confiscated all his personal devices, including phone and laptop, for investigation. From here, another dark curtain continued to be lifted. In his search history, the phrase, "how to get revenge on a woman," stood out prominently. Not only that, search results also showed Viet Tran had accessed podcasts specializing in discussing revenge methods in romantic relationships, read many articles describing detailed attacks on ex-girlfriends, and even visited dark websites providing phone surveillance services. All this data painted a sinister portrait, a cold, calculating perpetrator obsessed with hatred. With clear digital evidence along with a chain of suspicious behavior, police had solid grounds to charge him before the law. Additionally, to better explain the motive and psychological development leading to the crime, police invited criminal psychology experts to participate in analysis while thoroughly investigating the previous relationship between Viet Tran and A. What was revealed showed a concerning picture. Viet Tran was naturally highly possessive. When in love, he could pamper his girlfriend excessively, but simultaneously displayed irrational jealousy, frequently checking phones, controlling schedules, even getting angry just from seeing her chat with male colleagues. A's close friends often felt uncomfortable with how Viet was always clinging beside her, as if unwilling to leave even half a step. However, because of his gentle appearance and serious academic attitude, no one suspected that behind it was a twisted psychology that could lead to such tragic consequences. Viet Tran's background in Vietnam was ordinary. Parents who worked hard to send their child to study in the UK with hopes of changing his life and opening a bright future. However, pressure to succeed in a foreign land combined with his first major emotional shock became an unbearable psychological burden. When A decided to break up, instead of accepting reality and finding ways to move forward, Viet sank deep into obsession, turning love into hatred. In his mind, being abandoned wasn't just emotional damage, but personal humiliation. From there, he secretly nurtured intentions of revenge. Through later confessions, Viet Tran admitted he had fallen into a heavy state of obsession with stalking A, thinking day and night about how to know where she was, what she was doing, and whom she was meeting. From an IT student with a promising future, he gradually declined, turning himself into someone immersed in the dark forums of the dark web, paying hackers, quietly downloading podcasts instructing how to get revenge on women, then applying every detail like a blind student. These behaviors exposed serious deviation in thinking. Viet viewed love as absolute ownership, and when he could no longer maintain it, he wanted to destroy the other person instead of letting go. This was a typical crime of passion, when blind love, jealousy, and hatred mixed together, turning into deadly violence. Based on the chain of physical evidence along with statements from both victim and suspect, police reconstructed the complete sequence of events. After being decisively rejected by A in summer 2024, Viet Tran sank into despair and resentment, from then nurturing an intention of retaliation. Initially, he tried every way to contact A, from pleading and begging to threatening, but was firmly refused by her. The possessive obsession grew higher, making him unable to let go, but instead turned to blindly stalking her. When A became vigilant and blocked all contact, Viet revealed his dark side. He used technological skills to invade her privacy, then hired people to hack her phone. By the end of July, when he secretly read stolen messages about A's plan to go to Manchester for a date, the flame of jealousy in Viet erupted violently. In his mind was only one thought: he must prevent this meeting by any means, even through violence. From then, he tirelessly searched online for remote tracking methods, devouring every line and every podcast segment about how to get revenge on ex-girlfriends. Night after night, he nearly lost sleep, letting his mind drift into revenge scenarios, drawing up plans meticulous to the point of horror, from stalking schedules, preparing weapons, to calculating timing for attack and escape routes. Viet went to a hardware store, coldly choosing to buy a sharp folding knife, adding to his backpack a UV paint spray, a substance that glows under ultraviolet rays that could cause victims to become dazed and lose direction. He also bought a hood, gloves, dark clothing for disguise, and prepared a black fabric bag to hide a set of clean backup clothes to change appearance after committing the crime. He knew clearly A would leave London by train on the morning of August 3rd, and in his mind, the perfect scenario was to wait until evening, when the date ended and the girl returned to the station to go back to London. That would be the moment to strike. That morning, Viet left his cramped boarding room in Croydon carrying his backpack, heading straight to Euston Station. He deliberately used cash to buy a Manchester train ticket to avoid leaving transaction traces. On the same train journey lasting over 2 hours, he sat quietly in a corner of another car, wearing headphones, but with his mind boiling with revenge fantasies. Around 3 p.m. that day, the train stopped at Manchester Piccadilly Station. Among the bustling crowd, Viet quietly stepped out, his eyes immediately locking onto A. He maintained a safe distance, but every step was directed toward her. From afar, he witnessed A cheerfully greeting T, the new man who had appeared in her life. Their smiles and embraces were like a knife twisting straight into his blind, jealous heart. Throughout the afternoon and evening, Viet silently trailed behind like an unshakable shadow. When they entered Sibo Restaurant, he stood hidden across the street, eyes fixed through the brightly lit glass windows. When they left to go to Rosie's ballroom, he patiently followed again, sometimes pretending to look down at his phone, sometimes pretending to wait aimlessly at bus stops to avoid suspicious glances. Every intimate gesture between A and T made him boil with hatred, like a jealous fire burning more fiercely by the day. Around 11 p.m., when he saw them leave the bar, Viet immediately stood up, quietly merging into the darkness behind. His hand reached into the backpack, touching the folding knife and UV paint spray, checking the fatal weapons again. The streets were now sparse with people, dim yellow lights casting down on the damp pavement, everything creating perfect conditions for him to act. When the couple decided to walk to the Castlefield waterfront to enjoy quiet final moments of the night, the opportunity he had waited for so long opened up. Viet pulled down his baseball cap brim, dropping back a beat so his footsteps wouldn't make noise. Near midnight, A and T stopped to chat on the grass by the canal. From the shadows, Viet pulled the mask over his head, quietly approaching, only about 15 feet from the couple. In the brief moment before they could notice, he suddenly lunged forward, raised the UV spray and sprayed directly at both their faces. Immediately, the sticky liquid substance covered T's glasses and face, splashing into A's eyes as well, causing their vision to go completely dark, heads spinning, temporarily blinded. Without wasting a second, Viet drew the knife, aiming straight at T's chest for a fatal stab. A scream of pain rang out, then quickly faded. The victim's body collapsed onto the grass. I panicked and screamed for help, trying to run away, but before she could escape, the cold blade had already swept across her arm, then continued deep into her left thigh, hitting the artery directly. The sharp pain made her collapse, blood soaking the grass. The entire attack happened in a flash, less than 10 seconds, leaving behind a horrific scene in the deadly silence of the dark night. Immediately after, Viet retreated according to plan. He ran toward the waterfront, pulling off the blood-soaked black jacket and throwing it on the ground while running, ripping off the mask and gloves and tossing them into the dark Castlefield Canal waters to sink forever. Now he only wore the white t-shirt underneath, racing straight to the predetermined bush. There, he quickly stuffed the knife, spray can, and disguise outfit into the fabric bag, hiding it under the tree roots, then put on the clean clothes he had brought to disguise himself as an innocent person. Everything was completed in just a few minutes, but when patrol footsteps sounded from the distance, Viet didn't dare linger, immediately following the dark path, avoiding streetlights, then melting into the quiet night. A plan he thought was perfect, meticulous to every detail. However, before the experienced professional eyes of police, all calculations were quickly exposed, and exactly 1 day later, the perpetrator was caught. On August 13, 2024, Viet Tran was officially charged with 2 counts, intentionally causing grievous bodily harm. Just a few months later, in March 2025, he entered trial at Manchester Crown Court. The case immediately became the focus of attention not only from British public opinion, but also the Vietnamese community, as it was typical of the transformation when jealousy becomes blind violence. Before the court, Viet appeared with a gaunt figure, cold face, and indifferent eyes. He stubbornly refused to plead guilty, while defense lawyers tried every way to reduce the sentence. Their main argument was, the defendant only wanted to teach the victim a lesson in a mental state agitated by jealousy and absolutely had no intention of taking life. However, the prosecution quickly rebutted sharply. They meticulously presented the entire crime preparation process, from secret surveillance, hiring hackers, preparing weapons to planning escape. Every piece of evidence presented before the court carried high persuasive power, proving this was absolutely not an impulsive action, but the result of cold calculation. Additionally, records from London police about A's previous complaint against Viet Tran for harassment were also added, showing the revenge motive had been nurtured for a long time. Witnesses testified one by one, each statement like hammer blows striking directly at the defendant's defense efforts. Especially A, though still not completely recovered, courageously appeared before the court. She stood behind a protective screen to protect her identity, voice trembling but determined, recounting the horrifying moment of being attacked by her ex-boyfriend. The courtroom fell silent when she mentioned the seconds that seemed to approach death. T, the male victim, was also present. With a weak voice, he described the severe consequences the fatal stab had left. Chest surgery lasting many hours, months of treatment and recovery, and to this day, still suffering persistent respiratory complications. Faced with undeniable evidence and testimony, Viet Tran was finally forced to change his attitude. He bowed his head, voice choking, admitting he was the one who had harmed both victims. Nevertheless, he still tried to argue that in that moment, being controlled by emotions, he lost control and absolutely had no intention of taking life. That defense, compared to the chain of sophisticated preparation and cold behavior the prosecution had pointed out, only revealed more clearly the weakness and desperation of the defendant. The judge, after comprehensively considering the case file, affirmed this was a case with particularly aggravating circumstances. The perpetrator not only nurtured cruel revenge intentions, but also planned in advance with meticulous calculation, causing serious physical and mental harm to 2 victims, while spreading insecurity throughout the community. Therefore, the court decided there was no room for leniency. On April 3, 2025, in the packed courtroom, the trial panel officially sentenced Viet Tran to 13 years imprisonment for the total charges, including intentionally causing grievous bodily harm and causing serious injury to 2 victims. According to the verdict, he must serve at least 2/3 of the time in prison before being considered for parole. And most likely, after completing his sentence, he will be deported back to Vietnam, completely ending his dream of changing his life in a foreign land. The trial closed in a heavy atmosphere. The 2 victims quietly left, avoiding media cameras. Through their lawyer, they only said they were satisfied that justice had been served, but the emotional wounds remained, unlikely to heal easily. As for Viet Tran, at the moment of hearing the sentence, he nearly collapsed. His shoulders trembled, face bowed down, eyes lost. The 13-year sentence not only took away his freedom, but also permanently ended the bright future once promised to a foreign student. Justice had finally spoken, and the jealous perpetrator had paid dearly for the crime he had sown. Do you think the 13-year prison sentence is sufficient for Viet Tran to pay for what he caused? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for following along, and see you in the next cases.